Hey everyone, it is about 3 p.m. on this Thursday, December 4th, 2025. It is about 46 degrees outside under mostly cloudy skies. But yeah, like I said, it's 3 p.m. Pacific time on this Wednesday, December 4th, 21 days away from Christmas. Now, with that said, before I get started on the topic, I'd like to ask you to do me a soft favor, and that's like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Also, guys, if you want to find my content outside of YouTube, you can find me at all other video platforms, if you will, like Rumble, Dailymotion, Odyssey, and VENMO. You can also find me on various podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeart, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and to an extent Sirius XM. You can also find me at patreon.com. You can also find me at DeviantArt, if you will, deviantart.com, at BVW1979, and at inkbunny.net. That's INKBUNNY.net, at BWRoses. You can also follow me on social media at TikTok, Twitter, aka X, as well as on Blue Sky. I also have a Cash App and a Venmo, guys, if you want to help out in that area as well. And I have a couple of online stores. I have a Teespring store, link is at the bottom of the description, and a Fourth Wall store, link is at the top of the description. Also, guys, during this video premiere, the live chat will be open. That's if you want to chime in, give your thoughts on what I have to say. It'd be greatly appreciated. And if you feel like you're in the mood to do so, you can donate with SuperChats. That's right, the SuperChats will be open for you guys to come on in and donate if you feel like doing so. And the comment section will be open as well on both the video premiere and afterwards. And also, guys, if you still want to donate but you don't get here in time for the live video premiere, you can do so with the Super Thanks option, which is the little heart with the $sign. Also, guys, there will be some affiliated program stores that will be listed with items you can check out just in time for Christmas, as well as, for whatever else you have in mind. And it helps, and by, looking into them and maybe picking something out, it not only helps the store out and helps you out, but it also helps me out through the commissions. But with that said, let's get into the topic at hand here. Now, the reason I bring this up, the reason I want to bring this topic up is because somebody brought it up on social media. They brought it up, I think, on Facebook, and they brought it up on Twitter, aka X.com. And what they brought up was I guess you could say the demographics. You'll see it here on the screen. But the demographics, if you will, of the viewership numbers for lead-in shows when it comes into, weekly television. But mostly they were looking at the weekly show for Thursday. Now, some might say, well, this was because it was Thanksgiving. They had to have something on at that time, and it's a marathon. And that's true. That's true. A marathon is something that a lot of networks like AMC would do, for the holidays. But be that as it may, they noted basically the viewership numbers on how high they were from one of the Christmas Vacation marathon movies that was put out. Well, not Christmas Vacation, but one of the National Lampoon. It was the Christmas Vacation one, right? Yeah, they were doing a marathon of Christmas Vacation. But basically the marathon, lead-in numbers from basically the 7 to 9, time frame, the 7 to 9 time frame, and they noticed how high the numbers were, for a lead-in program into the encore presentation that followed. And the reason they bring this up is because they look at the fact that, well, wait a minute, if these numbers are high for a marathon running, marathon run of one of the more classic Christmas movies out there of the modern era, in the past 35 years, or 35 plus years, if you will. If these are the numbers for that on AMC, by viewership perspective, then what does that mean, from a positive perspective, positive point of view, when it comes to, TNA Thursday Night Impact, as it's going to be now known, starting January 15th. What does this mean? What does this mean? Well, what it means is that TNA is going to get a lot more eyes on their product than they ever did on Access TV, on AXES TV. AXES TV. AXES, Access TV, they're going to get a lot more viewership numbers, a lot more odds, on the product right off the bat. But what AMC has to do, obviously, is have something good to lead into. Now, they could have a movie, and that could work. A movie leading into Impact would be good, and maybe it might be something people will want to watch, excuse me there, I don't know why I said it that way, will want to watch and enjoy and kind of get them in that mood. Or they can have some of the AMC original series lead into it. I mean, a lot of people still like The Walking Dead, right? A lot of people still like Breaking Bad. A lot of people still like Better Call Saul, and so on. So if you can have, let's say, a marathon, I wouldn't say a marathon, but you can have a block, that kind of content leading into TNA Thursday Night Impact, then hey, you got yourself pretty much a winner, right there. You pretty much got yourself a winning formula for TNA. And basically in the long run show that this is going to be a good investment, especially if you're going to acknowledge that throughout this new venture, this new era for TNA, that you're still going to be promoting the fact that they're going to have NXT WWE NXT stars crossing over and vice versa. So basically, in the long run, it's a big win-win for TNA and by extension AMC. And then when you really think about it, you add in the idea that it's going to be simulcast on the streaming platform, which means even afterwards you'll still be able to watch it, without issue. Like if you miss it, maybe due to a family function or you're working, you got the regular on-demand. You got the regular on-demand option from AMC, hopefully, this is a part of or will be part of. You also have the DVR if you want to DVR it, if you can, and so on and so forth. As well as you have the streaming option, which means you can go and scroll on the streaming platform while you're, at work or at lunch or whatever. Well, basically at lunch, at work or whatever. Or you're on the plane and it has Wi-Fi. Or you're on a bus and it has Wi-Fi. You can go to the streaming app and watch it there. So basically, in general, this is a win-win situation. But the reason I bring this up is because this is actually something that is, very noticeable. It's very noticeable for a lot of people that have AMC. That they have AMC because, one, we know AMC can have some good movies on there. We know they can have some good shows. But we never know exactly why certain, shows would get the numbers they do unless they had something that led into it that was just as good or just as invested in by the viewers, by the fans, by the watchers. And obviously, having a decent block, if you will, a decent block of programming, either movies or shows, to lead into Impact is definitely one way to go. It's definitely one way and direction to go for for AMC in this partnership with TNA. It really is. Because when you really think about it, do we have any idea what the lead-in for TNA on Access right now is? Do we have any idea? No one? No one? No? Anybody? Anybody have any idea? Well, because we don't have any idea, it would explain why the viewership numbers for Access, for Impact on Access, is not as high as it should be. But now it will be. It will be huge in the long run. Now that they're going to be on AMC. Now that they're going to be on AMC, and then again on top of that, they got the streaming platform that's going to help them out. They got the on-demand. You got DVRing, and you got more homes getting access, if you will, pun intended, to AMC, or having access and getting access to AMC, pun intended. Than they have on Access, period. On AXES, period. They have more homes that have AMC as part of their cable outlets, cable system packages, and all that. That people that have been wanting to see TNA back on a regular basis are now going to get that opportunity. And as I've mentioned before, and others have mentioned before, the possibilities for this partnership is unlimited. I mean, yeah, it's about. I think the partnership goes for 3 years, 3 years, 4 years at most. So, but it's an unlimited potential right there for whatever they can bring to the table. Within that time frame. For when it, from within that time frame. And here's the thing, with WWE partnering with them and all that, having this working relationship, that's going to help out even more. Because TNA doesn't just have access to their roster, doesn't just have access to the NXT roster, but because WWE owns 51% of AAA, they're the parent company of AAA now. Through that 51% ownership, they also have access to AAA stars. So if they want some AAA stars, there you go. Pretty much you got a winning formula, right there with the not just in-house roster, but the the other kind of rosters you can pick from through partnerships that you have. So I think it's a great move. I really think it's a great move for them in the long run. And also, like I said, the fact that they're in a situation that on a Thursday, people could be watching an encore presentation of The Walking Dead or one of the Walking Dead spin-offs, if not one of the Breaking Bad shows or whatever, or even a movie, that might intrigue them. They might, they might be watching that, and then all of a sudden they'll be like, okay, let's see what else comes on, and then here comes Thursday Night Impact, and the viewership numbers for them there just goes, right through the roof. Well, I wouldn't say through the roof, but it gets a lot higher than they would expect. So this person bringing this up, is actually onto something. Because, again, if a Christmas Vacation Marathon, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation Marathon, can rake in the numbers, the viewership numbers and all that, based on just its repetitiveness, back to back to back to back to back to back to back, and all that. If it could rake in that numbers on a Thursday, the night Impact's going to be there, then what else could you have as a lead-in from that 7 to 9 time slot, for Impact to have or to, build off of, come January 15th? What lead-in are you going to, what kind of lead-in will you have, to make that happen? Now, there's no doubt, even though they haven't announced it yet, there's no doubt they're going to probably make a big deal out of this. That being AMC and TNA, they'll probably make a big deal out of this come January 15th. Well, we might get maybe, something that, we never thought we'd see. Like, I think Final Resolution is this week, right? So they might decide, hey, let's put Final Resolution 2025 on as a lead into the debut of Impact on Thursday nights on AMC. They might do that. They might do a marathon of the best of TNA. Well, we know kind of the history of TNA. They might do that. And that's the other thing, too. They have access as well, because Anthem Sports, they're the parent company of TNA. Anthem Sports has access to a lot of these documentaries and a lot of these best of, DVDs and Blu-rays that TNA has or has distributed throughout the years, the 20 plus years. They can basically use those things, use those documentaries, those events as lead-ins to the debut for Thursday Night Impact on AMC. They could do that, and that will get people to tune in because they're going to want to see, these best of, compilations. They're going to want to see these documentaries, if you will, that maybe they haven't seen, or they haven't seen at all, or they have seen, but they've displaced their DVD, the Blu-ray, and all that. This is if they did something like that, that's going to get people to tune in because they'll want to see it. They're going to want to see it, that way, they can get, like, let's say they're new to TNA, they become new to TNA over the past year or so, but they don't know too much of the history. You put the history of TNA on there, one of them, I think that one of the volumes, I think they did 1 or 2 volumes, right? You do that, and guess what? People will learn a lot more about TNA in just that matter of time. In just that matter of time than they've ever had. So, again, it's going to be, very interesting to see, what they have in store come January 15th. Are they going to do a marathon of TNA to lead up to it? or are they just going to go with a regular block of shows or movies to build up to it that might, or that they know probably more than likely will get people's attention to tune in and watch? We'll have to see. We'll have to see what they got, set up. But whatever they do have planned, if what this person's saying is true, as far as the lead-ins go, if what they're saying is true as far as the lead-ins go, based off this Christmas marathon that that took place on Thanksgiving night, through its repetitiveness, if what they're figuring out, could be, reality, then there's going to be a lot more eyes. According to them, 12 times more eyes, maybe more. 12, I would say, my honest opinion, I think it would be about almost 15 times more eyes on the TNA product than they've had on Access, period. And that's going to be huge for them. That's going to be huge because they're going to see, wrestling in a way that's it's like a middle, like I mentioned before in the video about 2025, not being a good year, not being the best year for WWE and AEW, and that TNA is one of those promotions that found that middle ground. They're going to see a company that has that middle ground that gives them, a variety of things, not just good wrestling, but when necessary, they can put on some good hardcore, when they need to, and so on and so forth. So, so for, TNA, whatever the lead-in is, it's going to get them a lot of eyes. It's going to get them, in my opinion, 15 times more eyes and viewers on the product than I think they've ever thought they'd have, in a 20-plus year history. I mean, they had a lot of viewers when they were on Spike, don't get me wrong, but even those dwindled over time. Here, though, they're going to have more viewers than I think they've ever expected, because even though Spike, TNN, formerly, the Nashville Network, the National Network, and so on and so forth, and now Paramount Network, basically, AMC was in a lot more homes historically. This is my opinion. From what I know, AMC was in a lot more homes than TNN, aka Spike, aka Paramount. They were in a lot more homes. AMC's in a lot more homes than the Pop channel, which was formerly the TV Guide channel. In a lot more homes than Destination America was, or is. So they're in a lot of households, probably more so than I think anybody in the history of TNA has ever thought they'd, have their product be seen in. And I'm sure fans that have been following TNA for 20 plus years would ever expect to, have the show be seen in. And that's a positive. So whatever the lead-in is going to be, whether it's a marathon to give people a taste of what they're going to be getting on a weekly basis that leads into the premiere episode on AMC, or it's just a regular block of shows that people still tune into AMC and watch. One thing's for certain, TNA Thursday Night Impact is going to have 15 times more viewers than they've ever had, period. And it might dwindle, it might go up and down throughout the run on AMC, but those numbers are going to be a lot more higher than I think anybody will imagine. And it will probably be high enough for them to be retained by AMC as this initial contract and media rights deal gets ready to expire. I got a feeling those numbers will still be strong enough to be, for AMC to want to retain TNA and keep them abroad on their network. But yeah, if what this person in this graphic that I'm showing you throughout this audio video is, correct in, then basically, TNA is going to probably be very, very successful, and it might, even though it'll be on a different night, it might outshine AEW in viewership numbers, maybe even NXT in viewership numbers. But you know what's crazy? Even though NXT's on a different night, AEW's on a different night, and TNA's on a different night, the partnership between TNA and NXT, what company is sandwiched in the middle that's basically, having the viewership numbers, the eyeballs taken off the product because of NXT? It's AEW. So can you imagine what's going to happen is if, Tony Khan, as I've mentioned before, doesn't get his act together come next year, can you imagine what's going to happen you know, on the Tuesday before, on the day before, on Tuesday with NXT, and they're drawing in all these numbers because of what people like there, you know, and then their show happens, and then, you know, people compare the ratings and they say, oh, NXT beat AEW again, but then the following day, here comes Thursday Night Impact on AMC, and the numbers even, yeah, the debut numbers are going to outshine AEW, let's be honest. But even afterwards, those numbers for Impact might be a little higher than expected, even after the initial honeymoon period. Can you realize what that makes AEW look like if they don't get their act together and their viewership numbers are down and down, are down and down normally than what they should be, and that even after the initial honeymoon period is over, Impact is still drawing in more than them, as well as, with NXT, because they're sandwiched in between, on the night in the middle of the week, it doesn't make AEW look good. And Tony Khan, can and probably will play it off like, oh, we're fine. No, Tony, you're not going to be fine. So again, what he needs to do is get his act together, because when you think about it, combining the viewership numbers on both nights, even after the initial honeymoon period is over with TNA and AMC and things are back to like a normal schedule, a normal, routine run, those combined numbers are going to make AEW look less as a challenger brand and more like a brand that, and I say it with all due respect, is essentially the ECW of a modern era. And we all know what ECW became for WCW and mostly for WWE. They became a feeder system, even though they didn't publicly come out and acknowledge it or admit to it. It just became obvious they became a feeder system. And that's exactly what will happen to them if they don't get things together and make sure their numbers, even being in the middle of the week, is stronger than both TNA and NXT combined. Because like I said, even after the initial honeymoon period is over, TNA's numbers are still going to be huge. And they slightly might dwarf AEW's. And then again, like I said, you combine it with NXT's, it's like, Tony Khan's really got to get his act together. That's all I'm going to say. But again, if what this person is saying is true, or has some truth to it, some factuality to it, I can say this. I can say this. TNA is probably going to get a lot more new fans than they've ever had in a long time, just based on that. But we'll see. They might be wrong, but they might be right, and they might be, they might be in the middle with what they're saying, and kind of, kind of showcasing, if you know what I mean. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, and share the video. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube and to support me outside of YouTube as well. And also click on the items for the affiliated stores and programs. Helps them out, helps you out, and it helps me out. But guys, give me your thoughts in the comments if you haven't already in the live chat. And if you haven't donated in the live chat through SuperChats, if you felt like it, but you still want to, Super Thanks will be open. But guys, let me know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about it? Do you think there is truth to this? Some factuality, some reality? And do you think if AEW doesn't get their act together, that even after the initial honeymoon period is over and things are back to that normal routine, that the numbers for TNA combined with the numbers with NXT on Tuesday, combined with AEW being sandwiched in the middle, could basically put AEW to shame unless TK gets his act together? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. And until next time, I am out.